This is JCT TV. This is Bible study for the 21st century. I'm really delighted to have Bill Webster on the program, Dr. Bill Webster. He is, for 35 years now, a grief counselor. He's a pastor. He's got a doctorate in grief counseling. He's gone through two major bereavements in his life, a wife and a son. He's written prolifically. He's very, very well known and well respected. And if you're grieving or you know someone who is, this is an interview you won't want to miss.
Jim Cantelon Today is a program dedicated to the teaching of the good news of Jesus Christ. This all through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. JCT also brings to you encouraging testimonies and stories from Christian leaders all over the globe. If this program has added value to your life, would you please consider becoming a partner? To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
Last program, I introduced Dr. Bill Webster to you. And if you were watching last show, you know exactly what we're getting into here. And if you weren't watching last show, you need to log on to jimcantelontoday.com or Jim Cantelon on YouTube, but you need to watch last week's interview because it's a very profound introduction to 5 interviews I'm conducting with Dr. Bill Webster about bereavement, loss, and the humongous impact of grief in the lives of those who lose loved ones, which is happening, of course, every day. And in fact, you may be watching right now and you're overwhelmed yet with your loss. So, Bill, last week we talked about your first wife having a massive heart attack after 11 years of marriage. You were pastoring and she dies. You had 2 sons.
Right.
A little over a year ago, was it one of those boys who was died?
Yes.
Who was killed?
Yep.
He was 42 years of age. Can you tell me the story?
Well, I can. I'd been a counselor for 30 years, 32 years, whatever. And then the unbelievable happened because I've counseled people who've lost children. And to be honest with you, it's always been my worst nightmare that something would happen to one of my kids. If I ever had one prayer, it was always, please don't let my boys die before I do. And Steve had an accident. I got a call at 4 o'clock in the morning. He had fallen down a flight of concrete stairs. He hit his head. He suffered a severe brain damage. And I flew out to British Columbia where he was, and we watched. He never regained consciousness. We watched for 3 weeks. He'd had surgery, but he really never regained consciousness. And there was little or no hope that he would ever recover. And so 3 weeks after he died. And I can tell you, Jim, even though I've watched for 30 years people, it was devastating. It was just devastating. There are some deluded people who think I'm something of an expert. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, there are no real experts. Right. But I know all the theory of grief. I have a doctorate in the field. I've written books. I mean, I've done seminars for years and years and years. But in that moment, the theory didn't mean anything. Because it's one thing to know the theory. It's a different thing to have the experience. And I think that sometimes that's where, we come short in supporting people because we tell them, we give them strategies, we give them advice, and that's all good and it's all very well intended. But in that moment, it really doesn't matter, because there's only one thing that a grieving person wants. They want their loved one back. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing that we can't do for anyone. And I think that's the most frustrating part of the whole process.
Was it difficult for you? You know, you're a very humble guy, but in my experience, and I've been doing television and writing books for several decades, I've never encountered anyone quite like you in terms of what you do. You're pretty unique in the world. I know there are others, but you're the only one I've met. Here you are, the expert, as you say, and who is an expert, but that's how people peg you. You've written books. You have the website, griefjourney.com.
That's right.
At moments, are you saying to yourself, give your head a shake, Bill? You know how to handle this. You're the expert. My boy's dead, but I can walk through this with much greater dispatch than I did my wife's death.
That's a great question. To be honest with you, I just completely shut down.
Huh.
I took a sabbatical off my work, and I just sat there out there in my patio that summer and cried and just felt it. And yeah, it was devastating. It's really the only word I can use.
Was it a different kind of devastation from losing your wife of 11 years to that severe heart attack?
Yeah. Well, now we're here for the next 12 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Because some people say, well, is it worse to lose a spouse or is it worse to lose a child? Yeah. And I say to all the people I meet, whether it's a parent, a child, a spouse, a sibling, a friend, the worst kind of loss is yours. Because when you've had losses in your life, when I've had losses in my life, it feels like the worst thing that could possibly happen in the worst way at the worst possible time. So it's a level playing field. Was it different from my wife? Yeah, it was very different from my wife. First of all, because I was at a different age, different part of my life. Secondly, because I think I'd known Carolyn for 11 years, and while I loved her dearly and all the rest of it, I'd known Steve for all of his life. Yeah. Plus, I think what makes a parent's, the death of a child uniquely difficult for a parent is this. You're supposed to look after your kids. You're supposed to kiss things and make them better. And I wasn't able to do that for 3 weeks, looking at them, watching them, pleading with them to come back and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it was uniquely difficult, but I don't think I want to compare it with anything or anybody else. I think everybody's loss is uniquely difficult. And I guess that's one of the other misunderstandings about grief, because we want to have it neat and tidy and the 5 phases of grief, and it doesn't work like that.
So if it doesn't work like that, and you've written about the theory, does that mean your writing career was in vain?
No. And I'll tell you why. Driving to the studio, right? Yeah. We drove for about an hour to come to the studio. And by the way, thank you very much for inviting me on the program.
Pleasure.
And we followed a map. Yeah. And we started out at A, and we followed this road, and then we changed to that road, and then another road, and finally, after twists and turns and stuff, we got to where we needed to be. Because a map shows you how to get from A to B. Right. But a map isn't the territory, because we drove through some beautiful territory today, right? The trees and all of these kinds of things. So there is a map, but it's not the same as the territory. I think that's where people make the mistake, that we can help people understand, but there's going to be twists and turns and detours and this and that and everything else. So it's a uniquely personal journey. That's why we call it a grief journey, because it is a journey. It's not an event. It's a process. It's a journey.
On this journey, Bill, and you've been through it twice now, plus you have written about it. You've got one of your books has sold over 500,000. Are there unexpected moments of peace and or even of joy when grieving, or is it a constant valley experience?
I think it's a roller coaster, Jim. 1 minute you're up, and the next minute you're down. One day you have a great day, and then you're down in the depths again. But again, that's almost too formal. It comes and goes. That's how I describe grief. But what I try to encourage people to do, and I think what's helped me the most, is that I think it's important to put the death in the context of the life. In other words, to say, yeah, you're never going to forget about the death. But my son fell down a flight of stairs and a brain injury, and 3 weeks later he died. I refuse to define his life by his death. So in other words, he lived for 42 years. And thinking about that and all of the things that he did. I mean, this guy was a helicopter pilot. He was a forest firefighter. He was a ski coach. He did more in 42 years than some people do in twice that. And so it doesn't take the grief away. I'm still devastated that he died, but he lived, and I wouldn't have missed a minute of it. So that's what brings me comfort, is focusing on his life and what he did, and the fact that he has a little 5-year-old daughter who's my granddaughter, and so now I can pour some of my energy and so on into that relationship. That helps to bring me comfort. He died. I'll never forget that. Devastated by it, but he lived. And the death is in the context of the life. And when one of the parts of our grief support programs is encouraging people to think about the life as well as about the death, and that brings a balance to the process.
When he was training to be a helicopter pilot, did you have moments as a dad when you thought, boy, that's a dangerous thing to be doing?
Yep.
You were thinking about stairs as being dangerous.
Yep. Yeah, well, you see, this is the one thing I
can't.
That's right. This is the one thing I can't understand. He was a championship skier.
Yeah.
He took chances like you wouldn't believe.
He could have skied into
He was
a
a
tree.
forest firefighter.
Yeah.
He was a helicopter pilot, and then he falls down a flight of concrete stairs. Yeah. And as the doctor says, 99 people do this and they break a shoulder or something like this, but he hit his head. It just doesn't make sense, you know, that this, because he was an athlete. He was very nimble on his feet and so on. So it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, that's part of the question.
Now, you're his dad and he's died. You are numb, as you said last interview. Numbness is the prevalent response to these moments. Were you able to comfort his wife while this was happening, or were you too numb even to comfort her?
No, I think I started out wearing the grief counselor hat
For her sake.
for everybody's sake.
For everybody's sake. So you were the strong one.
Yeah. Well, was I? I mean, we could analyze that. We could have a chat about that.
Yeah.
Was I the strong one, or was that the role that everyone expected me to fill, and I was going to fill it?
Right.
You know, regardless.
Right.
I found that my own grief has been quite private.
Yeah.
I've not wanted to sort of share it one-on-one with others or whatever. I mention it in my groups and so on. But by and large, I think, rightly or wrongly, and maybe more wrongly, I felt that people were looking to me and thinking, oh my goodness, if Bill falls apart, what hope is there for us? Because he's the expert.
Right.
So there's a lot of pressure. And I felt it when I was a pastor. I've been a grief counselor now for 35 years. But as a pastor, I was expected to be strong for everybody else. As a grief counselor, I've been expected to be strong for everybody else. And I felt like that's what I wanted to do.
Bill Webster, griefjourney.com, friends, you want to log on to that and you'll see his books and his articles, essays, all available there. This is a ministry that is very, very unique and very profound and deeply significant in my view. And I hope that you'll access Bill that way. And gratefully, I can tell you that we've got another 3 interviews to go. So just keep watching JCT. I'll be back with our Bible teaching right after this.
Friends, as you know, Jim Cantelon has been offering Cantelon's Casual Commentary as a Bible study supplement to his ongoing exposition of St. Matthew's Gospel on JCT TV. He's excited to offer Volume 4, which completes the Matthew study. The Transfiguration, Triumphal Entry, Crucifixion, and Resurrection of Jesus Christ are all covered in this volume. Like the first 3 volumes, it's concise, captivating, and casual. To order your copy, you can call, write, or go online. Request Cantelon's Casual Commentary Volume 4, and for a gift in any amount, it will be sent to you. When you place your order, also consider becoming a monthly partner. Remember, your gifts help us build this ministry.
Now, I just got to verse 6 of Matthew, last program of Matthew 28, but before I get back to verse 7, I just want to remind you, friends, that we have been journeying through Matthew for a long time, and it's been a good journey. I'm really glad that we are able to take this time and just go through it step by step. My goal, of course, is to give you the opportunity for some casual and yet hopefully spiritually stimulating exposure to the Gospels. So we're almost done Matthew, and when we're done Matthew, we're going to Mark. And then when we're done Mark, we'll go to Luke, and then we'll go to Acts, because Acts is volume 2 of Luke. And then we'll go to John. That will take us a few years, but hey, as the Lord gives us health and strength, let's just take the time. Let's pick it up at verse 7. Last time we looked at the beginning of the story of the resurrection, of the violent earthquake, the guards being mortified, the angel being the one who scared them. He didn't do that deliberately, but just his presence scared them. Then the women showing up, they're afraid too. And the angel says he's not here, he has risen, which is the classic statement of the resurrected Christ. Then in verse 7 he says, and go quickly and tell his disciples that he's risen from the dead, and indeed he is going before you into Galilee. There you will see him. And then, it's as easy to just pass by. Behold, I have told you. You know what this suggests to me? It suggests that this angel truly was a messenger. He was on assignment. He had been instructed by none other than heaven itself to be present at the empty tomb and to give instructions to the women. So, there's something going on here. It's not just a space-time event. There's something going on in the heavenlies, as it should, because we're talking here about the Son of God. We're not talking about just some, well-meaning rabbi who happened to have a big impact and then died and then is seen as risen from the dead. We're talking about an actual resurrection of the actual Son of God. This is big stuff, okay? So behold, I've told you. In other words, the angel is saying, I got that stress off my shoulders. I did what I was told to do, which is kind of cool. Go quickly, tell his disciples, he's risen from the dead. So they went out quickly from the tomb with great fear and great joy and ran to bring his disciples word. Okay? And as they went to tell his disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, rejoice. Now, it depends on the translation. Another one says, hail. Another one says, basically, good morning. However you want, in modern Hebrew, we say, Boker Tov. Good morning. Okay. They came and held him by the feet and worshiped him. And then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brethren to go to Galilee, and there they will see me. Now, I'll meet you all in Galilee. Galilee was a long ways away. And you didn't get in a car and drive. You didn't get in a helicopter. I mean, when I lived in Jerusalem, I had a number of ministry points throughout the country. And one of them for many years was in the Upper Galilee. I also used to broadcast in southern Lebanon. So I would travel up through the Galilee every week for years. I know it intimately. I can almost drive the Jordan Valley with my eyes closed. I know what the Sea of Galilee is like. I know what the hills above it are like, and the winding road up past the Mount of Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, and all the way up to the northern border of Israel with Lebanon. It's a long way, friends. I mean, it would take me in the car, my little Volkswagen, about 3.5 hours. To walk it, you're talking a couple days. I mean, maybe you could walk it in a 12-hour day. I don't think you could, but it's a huge distance. So instead of saying, I'll see you at the Damascus gate, I'll see you in Galilee, which means that a number of other things, they were going to have to hold counsel with one another and with their own thoughts for a number of hours, trying to get their minds around the fact that Jesus had risen from the dead. I mean, this was huge stuff. Anyway, verse 11. While they were going, behold, some of the guard came into the city and reported to the chief priests all the things that had happened. And when they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers, saying, tell them his disciples came at night and stole him away while we slept. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we'll appease him and make you secure. So they took the money and did as they were instructed, and this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. Now, this is the real Passover plot. With all due respect to the popular book of that title, it was written several years ago. This is the real Passover plot. If you were a guard, and you were commissioned to guard anyone, living or dead, and that tomb was vandalized, or that living person was burgled or beat up or killed, your life was at stake as a soldier. I mean, they showed no mercy. If you were derelict in your duty, even though you could have had the most reasonable excuse in the world, including an angel of all things, it didn't hold water. You're dead. You're gone. Your life is over. And so these guards, as they're reporting what had happened, are trembling because they know what is about to happen. They could lose their heads right there on the spot, or they could be crucified, or they could be run through with a spear. Any number of ways of killing could happen to them because they'd been commissioned to guard the tomb so that nobody could say that Jesus had risen from the dead through some nefarious plot of the disciples where they come and steal the body during the night. And Jesus is gone. You have no defense. You're going to lose your job and lose your life. Anyway, in fear and trembling, they tell the chief priests all that happened, which tells you, by the way, that this guard was a temple guard. It wasn't necessarily the Roman guard. It was the temple guard, but the same rules would apply to the temple guard as applied to the Roman soldiers. Then the Sanhedrin is called in, 71 men of scribes, Pharisees, and Sadducees. Scribes were the biblical lawyers, the Pharisees were the biblical interpreters, and the Sadducees were the keepers of the temple culture. Okay? Very important roles, all of them played. They comprised, in the number of 71, the Sanhedrin, which was the ruling council that provided civil law and religious law legislation, okay, and decision-making. The elders consulted together. Why are they consulting together? Because they know that Jesus' body has not been stolen. They're as amazed as anyone at what has just happened. They cannot explain it. They're upset about it, and more than upset, they're concerned that they're going to lose everything. That the word's going to get out about this resurrection, all of the world is going to turn to Jesus, and the thing that we have greatly feared will come upon us. There'll be this massive insurrection, there'll be this huge rebellion, the Romans will be routed, and then we're going to be facing war after war after war after war, all because of this event. So how do we get around it? Here's how we get around it. You bribe the guards. We say, guys, you're not going to lose your lives. We're going to give you enough to keep you living for the rest of your life, even though you're going to have to lose your job as a guard, but you're not going to lose your life. Large sum of money, emphasis on large sum of money, okay? This was no peanuts. Tell them the disciples came at night, stole them away while you slept. While you slept. I mean, that is so self-condemning. Sleeping on duty took a lot of money. Anyway, they took the money, verse 15, did as they were instructed, and this saying, the lie, in other words, is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. So that was the real Passover plot. That's how they handled it. And we all know that they were woefully unsuccessful in getting that message out to the world.
JCT TV is the official voice of WOW, working for orphans and widows. Jim Cantelon is the founder of WOW and has been ministering to orphans and widows in distress for 18 years. WOW's focus is home-based care for the dying. The horizon is vast, with thousands of the least of these in Africa and India. WOW depends on your generous support. To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
I fill in the blanks with Cantelon's casual commentary. There's so much that I want to say I can't say because of the strictures of time with the television program. So I have written this. This is all of Matthew. I've reduced it to 4 tranches, altogether about 160 pages. If you would like this, one or all of these, please ask for them, okay? You do the conventional thing, through the internet or through mail or whatever. Ask for it. And when you ask for it, remember to support the program. I need your most generous gift because our program just keeps expanding and I keep the costs really, really low. But without your participation, then I'm kind of high and dry. And if you're enjoying the program, then please give us your vote of confidence that way, will you? And I so appreciate it. I really do. Remember, when you support JCT, you're supporting our missions program, working for orphans and widows.